Tensions flaring up in the Middle East after Hamas confirmed its political bureau leader Ismail Haniyeh has been killed in an attack in Tehran. The Palestinian militant group has described the strike as a severe escalation that would not achieve its goals and pressed that the killing would not go unanswered. There has not been any comment from Israel. Hamas has described it as a Zionist raid, and Iran's Revolutionary Guards confirms that Haniyeh was killed along with one of his bodyguards, adding that it is investigating the attack. Report says that Iran's top security body will discuss its strategy in response to the leader's death. It is not clear when the Hamas chief was killed, but this is him less than 24 hours ago when he met Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, before he took his oath of office. Haniyeh has been the face of the Palestinian group's international diplomacy since the war erupted in Gaza last October. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has strongly condemned the killing of the Hamas leader, describing it as a cowardly assault and urged Palestinians to remain united against Israel. Palestinian national and Islamic factions are now calling for a general strike and mass demonstrations. Ismail Haniyeh was a long-time leader of militant group Hamas, and he led political operations from exile in Qatar and Turkey. Appointed to the top job in 2017, he was central to the group's high-stakes negotiations and diplomacy, including the stalled ceasefire deal talks with Israel. He was also previously the Palestinian prime minister in 2006, following an upset victory by Hamas in that year's parliamentary election. Haniyeh is considered a pragmatist and is known to maintain good relations with the head of various Palestinian factions, including Hamas's rivals. Well, he has traveled on diplomatic missions to Iran and Turkey during the war, meeting the presidents of both countries. And in June, Hamas said that Haniyeh's sister and her family were killed in an Israeli airstrike. In April, Hamas said that Israeli airstrikes killed 3 of his sons and 4 of his grandchildren. And at the time, Haniyeh insisted that deaths would not affect ongoing ceasefire and hostage talks. Israeli authorities have not confirmed those reports. Well, for more analysis, we now have Frankel Pratt, lecturer of political science at the University of Melbourne, joining us live. Simon, thank you so much for joining us. Well, Israel has been targeting Hamas's top brass. How big of a deal is Haniyeh's death?
This is a very big deal for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is that not only is Haniyeh sort of a top diplomatic leader, he's also one of the senior figures responsible for the 7 October massacres. It would be he is one of the individuals whom the ICC may issue a warrant for. Well, he's no longer with us, so that won't happen. And I also think that killing him might have been one of these sorts of instrumental criteria for moving forward with a ceasefire. In other words, by killing one of the senior figures responsible for 7 October, the Israeli public might feel as though some justice has been done and that one of the key war aims has been achieved.
Well, what could his death really mean for the war in Gaza? Could this be a turning point for the conflict, perhaps?
I don't think that his death will have any significant impact on the locating of hostages or their bodies. Again, it may help Netanyahu navigate the difficult tensions of his current governing coalition in seeking a ceasefire. Because, of course, even though there is increasingly public support for a ceasefire in Israel, Netanyahu's far-right coalition partners have threatened to exit the coalition and bring down the government if he actually signs a ceasefire and the accompanying hostage deal. By killing a senior Hamas figure, this coming on the heels of the probable assassination of Mohammed Deif as well in Gaza, he may sort of, Prime Minister Netanyahu may now have enough credibility to overcome the opposition of his right-wing partners and get that deal signed.
Well, speaking of the deal, Haniyeh was involved in ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas. Simon, what's next on that front? Could this mean a deal is perhaps now completely off the table?
I don't believe that a deal is off the table. It wouldn't surprise me if Hamas's negotiating team now needs to take a little bit of time and figure out who next represents them, who will be heading the negotiation efforts going forward. And certainly Hamas has an interest in making it clear that they are upset at the death of their leader. At the same time, Hamas has a strong incentive to continue negotiating. The war has not been good for the Hamas organization, and as time goes on, it comes under significant military pressure. So I think that pragmatically, Hamas will likely not allow this to significantly derail negotiations in even the medium term, although, as I said, the short term is another matter.
Well, Hamas has threatened that the killing of its chief will not go unanswered. How could things really play out right now on the battlefront? Should we expect further escalation?
I don't think that Hamas has the capacity to escalate further. If they did, they would already be using that capacity. The war has devastated Gaza, no mistake, but it has also devastated Hamas as an organization. Its most experienced fighters are killed, its arsenals are depleted, and while it hasn't gone down yet and it is still fighting, I don't think that there's much more that it can do. I think the bigger question is whether Iran will treat this as a sufficient provocation to, say, mount another strike on Israeli territory, or whether Hezbollah will especially coming on the heels of the assassination of its military commander, Shukr, last night, whether they will retaliate. That's where the greater retaliation risk comes.
Well, then, growing fears of a wider war in the Middle East is really right now happening. Before Haniyeh's death, Israel targeted a Hezbollah commander in Lebanon, and the two assassinations now raised the stakes really not just for Hamas and Hezbollah, but also for Iran, which backs both groups. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't necessarily think Hamas has been a good proxy for Iran. I think Iran was not expecting the scale of the 7 October attacks. And while Hamas has been, an ally of Iran, I think that the main provocation of Haniyeh's killing is simply the fact that he was killed in Iran. And that may be answered in some sense. On the other hand, the killing of Fuad Shukr, the sort of senior military figure of Hezbollah, that's a bigger deal for Iran. That's the loss of a significant asset. And while Israel has portrayed this as a commensurate response to the missile attack on Majd al-Shams, which killed 12 children and injured many others, it's possible that this could lead to some escalation. All this said, I think that Iran and Hezbollah don't have much of a desire to escalate, and nor does Israel. The war in the north of Israel and the south of Lebanon continues for as long as the war in Gaza does, but neither Iran nor Israel, and certainly not Hezbollah, have an interest in that war spiraling out of control. So there'll be a lot of damage control taking place, I think.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. That was Frankel Pratt, lecturer of political science at the University of Melbourne.